Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Monster Hunter Stories 3, where we're going to pick right back up where the trial left off. So, just to give you the rundown on exactly how I'm going to do this playthrough for Stories 3. First off, if you haven't watched me do the trial leads directly into the main game. So if you want to see where everything picks up, then you really need to hop over to that video and watch that. That gives also some tips for the first little bit of the game because nothing really changes from trial to main game. So, other than that, what all am I going to show? Well, right now I'm letting a whole bunch of just random B-roll play, but for the most part I'm just going to cut and skip to important parts, which will generally be boss fights, or in the case of some side missions, how exactly to do them, like where the locations are that are important, and potentially just anything else that might actually be useful to see, and not really any of the filler in between. I'm letting it play out right now simply because I just want to give this explanation, and so it's a lot easier to do that over top of things that aren't really all that important than it is to actually talk about over top of stuff that is. Now, that aside, what about story? I'm going to avoid as many spoilers as possible. I will put timestamps in the description about where the different boss fights are, and I'll just mention the monster that's actually in the fight, so maybe avoid looking at the timestamps if you really don't even want to know that much. But if you don't want to know that much, I'm not really sure what you're doing watching this. I figured what this might actually be useful for is, let's say you're playing and you get stuck on an actual story boss, or potentially one of these side quest bosses. Not like the side quest as in one of the blue bosses, but a side quest as in a boss on the actual character side quests. Then you can jump to that timestamp, watch it, and know that at the very least I'm going to trim out the cinematics. Now, that being said, there's plenty of stuff that I just can't cut out, or that there just wouldn't be a video left. So, random bits of dialogue, I'm not going to worry about cutting that out. Stuff that they say during a fight, can't really trim that out without trimming out part of the fight. Stuff like the dual attacks, anything along those lines, I'm just leaving that stuff in. There's too much stuff to cut out, and it doesn't really leave that much of a watchable video behind. But other than that, I'm going to cut out as many things that actually involve the story as possible. Stuff that involves game systems and whatnot, I'm just going to leave all that in. So, let's jump on into it. What I'm doing right now, I was just browsing through the menu, and it's the first time I've noticed exactly how full the hunter card and everything was, now that we're actually out of the trial. But I currently, really my current loadout doesn't matter, because I'm just now getting ready to actually progress the story from the trial. I haven't went back into the castle and kicked that in yet, because the trial ended at the end of a cinematic. So, let's go ahead and do that. One thing that I thought I would point out is one little warning that I will put up on the screen anytime I'm getting ready to actually skip a cinematic, so you know exactly where they are when you're doing your playthrough. You'll actually see pop up at the bottom, skipping cinematic incoming. And that's just to give you a heads up. Now, we're going to do some side stories, but you should notice one important thing here. It says you will not be able to advance the main story while taking part in a side story. They are super serious about this. There's a side story that I got a little bit stuck on for a reason that I'll explain when we get to it in a minute. But during that side story, I was trying to figure out if there was a way to drop it and move back to the main story. There is not. So be aware that once you pick up one of these side stories, you have to finish it to go back to the main story. So the biggest tip I could give you is make a separate save. Like you have 3 save slots. Scatter your save slots periodically. That way, if you start into a side story and it turns out you're either not equipped to do it, or it's taking way more time than you thought it would, you can have a backup save. I didn't, so I had to figure out what was going on, but I'll explain at that point. It was really just me being stupid, and it turned out to be a lot easier to finish that story than I thought it was going to be. But the first one that we are going to take care of is Elanor. This side story is actually not all that terrible. I'll also try to remember, by the way, to put up a little note at the bottom as to which side story it is. What you're going to do with this one, and you'll kind of be forced into this as soon as the cinematic is over, you have to go through with the telescope, find a couple different locations until she says, yes, that seems like a good spot for these 3 items that I'm looking for, and each one has a different part, and you'll just drop your pins to make it easier to figure out where they're at. and then you go to each spot in turn to pick up those items. So I'll let this play out just in case anyone is having any trouble actually seeing what the things are, but this is not a particularly challenging side quest to complete. It's actually pretty straightforward, but whatever. I'll meet back up with you in just a minute or two whenever we actually get to something worth talking about. I guess actually as a side note, since I can't help myself but talk, if you accidentally hover back over a spot that you've already looked at, they'll repeat the dialogue they had the last time you looked at it. So if you forgot what they said, or you just forgot to put a marker down, don't worry, she's more than happy to repeat herself. And just because I'm going to respect your intelligence and assume you're not dumb enough to not be able to figure out how to actually do the marks on the map, we'll jump ahead to where we're actually going around to pick stuff up. There was one thing where it mentioned one of the items, the one involving a Paolumu, needed a breath attack. All it means you just need to hit it with a fireball from Rathalos, and you'll pick up the item pretty much instantly. It'll be the special item that you get, rather than it being something else that comes from that particular monster. But this is actually probably the easiest of the side quests to actually successfully do. Yeah, I forgot what the buttons were for a second, so I just had them sit there and roar for a moment. Which, if you forget about that, the roaring will actually make the weaker monsters submit, and yeah, let's just skip past this. Yeah, easy enough fight. It's just Velocidrome. I just haven't quite hit a high enough level yet to auto victory against general Velocidromes, but I need to start moving or else I'm going to have a whole bunch of other ones. But yeah, the first two items will just be sitting on the ground, and you pick them up like a normal item. And it actually doesn't take that long to travel between them. I'm assuming these character quests will probably get harder as we get further into the story. I'm pretty sure each person has 4 of these that you need to do. Now, why are we doing them? Well, the biggest thing that you'll see with this first couple is that they unlock crafting recipes. And they can be quite useful crafting recipes. So, they're good for expanding the amount of things that you have in your toolkit, at least so far. Whether or not that will continue to be the case as the game progresses, I don't know, but I'd be willing to bet it is. The way the game is split up internally, it's split up within chapters, and each chapter is split up into acts. More or less, I have enough footage to cover the entire first act, so to speak. Now, how much of that I end up keeping in, or whether or not I break this up into 2 episodes, well, you'll know by the time this comes out. But, see, there we got the molted gum shell just from hitting Paolumu with Fireball. And I figured just for good measure, we'd go ahead and kill him too. But the side quests will probably continue to be something that's a really solid reward, and at least one of them will probably be necessary if you want to do, say, the collectathon of this, but we'll explain on that when we get there. So I'll be quiet and let some of this stuff play out for just a minute, pick back up in a moment.
Amazing!
Now's your chance! I've got this!
How about this?
All right! You did it! Nice teamwork!
Yeah.
In case you can't quite tell where I'm at now, I'm on the little island out in the middle of the lake. That's where you pick up the last little piece that you need for this particular side quest. Now, once you have that, you actually go back to the first camp that you set up, the place where you picked up how to do the environment modifications. I thought you might be able to do it at the other ones, but I'm pretty sure it specifically mentions the one overlooking the castle. And you just hop off your Monstie and stand directly on top of Elanor and talk to her, and that'll kick everything in. She gives you the item that you need to do some cooking. And, well, it gives you a cooking recipe, which is going to be the general trend like we mentioned before. So next up is going to be Ogden, because he's a weird little fellow, but his stuff is actually pretty cool. Now, heads up before we go in and actually start his, you fight exotic species, or at least that seems to be what his are actually going to be about. So I feel like a lot of these will actually be types of side quests that will be really fun to experience yourself for the first time. So be warned, you may want to skip this one if you actually are interested in avoiding spoilers at all. So what we're going to be doing with this first Ogden mission is actually fighting an Exotic Velocidrome. And if you read through the descriptions on here, it'll actually tell you exactly where you need to go to see it, and it tells you some tips about what it's going to be like. And this happens to be what I believe would happen if a Velocidrome was fed methamphetamine. So this is actually a pretty cool little fight. And that's one of the reasons why I was saying you may want to actually go in on these blind at least the first time, because I know it surprised me when I saw what this dude does. So let's jump forward and take a look. And yes, that little speedy blue blur going around the tree is the Velocidrome. Basically, Sonic the Hedgehog in Velocidrome form. I'm pretty sure what you're actually meant to do is watch his pattern for a moment and then just position yourself so that he'll run into you. I was just a little too over-eager for that, so just kind of fumbled around until I actually got him to accidentally run into me. Purely unintentional, but we'll let the fight play out. Like I said, it's not really a particularly different Velocidrome fight, and I'm not an expert at this game by any means, but I don't think you have to be to actually win this one in particular. Like, if this guy gave you some trouble, realistically just playing for about, I don't know, another 15 minutes going into some egg dens and just killing some stuff should make you high enough level to be able to handle him.
Counting on you.
No!
You're on a roll.
Now's your chance!
Let's do this. How about this?
You did it!
And with that, we make Ogden happy, and you'll see some interesting bits of dialogue. And we get some recipes for shock traps and trank traps. Just as another aside, you actually do get some cool backstory on these characters as you go through and do these side quests. So if you are at all interested in the story, which I'll be honest with you, you really should be if you're playing this game. It's got an excellent story, probably one of the best stories for a monster catcher that I can think of outside of something like Cassette Beasts. So, interesting story, interesting exposition. So next up is Gual. It seems like what we're mostly going to be doing with Gual is along the lines of search and rescue style missions. So you'll go out, hunt some people down, and then help fight off a particular Monstie that has caused an issue. Again, not a particularly hard one to figure out where everything is. It actually marks your map pretty clearly. So let's just jump ahead to the big point. Like, see right there, it's already popping it up, showing a nice bright pillar of where to go. Just in case you couldn't figure it out from the dialogue, you actually have to swim across the water and go to the island. I just didn't think there was any point in including footage of me swimming across the water to get to the island. So you get to fight a purple Ludroth. Not a challenging fight, yet again. Basically just Ludroth, but hits a dash harder and has a lot of poison. But because the fights are probably more fun to watch than almost anything else going on in this, we'll let it play out.
All right. Thank you. You've got it. Counting on you. Murray! They're open. Let's go. Are you okay? Counting on you.
general pattern, by the way, if the monster's hit bar or HP bar is up top and it looks big like the boss fight, then I'm going to let it go out. So that gives this life powder recipe, and life powders are actually going to be super useful. I really should have made some for a fight that's coming up, but I didn't. But it is nice having some ability to actually act as support for your whole team, because in Monster Hunter stories, you usually are the best support character. Like, you can actually pick some people, if you pick the right companion to come into a fight with you, they'll do a pretty good amount of damage. And as long as you have the right Monstie, they'll do a good amount of damage. You can actually sit back and just keep everyone alive and actually struggle through some really hard fights just by playing support. So next up is Kora. This is actually the side quest that gave me the most issues. Now, why was that? Well, I'll explain once we actually get into it, and that was just my big reminder across the middle of the screen to point out to you that I really screwed up going into this one. Now, what she is doing, she apparently is a resource surveyor, and so she's having us come with her to check out a cave and look and see if it'll make a good mining area. And this is just me screwing up and getting into a fight. And through Cinemagic, we're now not in the fight anymore. We're up at the cave. It actually marks this cave pretty clearly, and it is actually right near a catavan stand. So if you've got your catavan stands set up properly, then you can jump straight to this one. Now, how exactly did I screw up? Okay, so the general layout of this cave is that you'll have a couple different turns that you can take. And it actually sort of hints here that it's talking about the dialogue that you could kind of easily lose your way in this cave system. Now, one thing it doesn't tell you is usually the wrong direction is actually going to involve some sort of fight. Now, that doesn't really matter that much except for one thing. Those fights at the very beginning, like where I'm at right now, are actually pretty easy. Like, if we wander in here and look at this, I think this one doesn't even have a fight. It just has some extra resources. So, plenty of exploration to be had in this cave, except let's jump ahead and see what's waiting for me around one turn. We went down deeper in the cave, fought a Velocidrome and Eon Garuga, and there's an Anjanath, and I don't really think anything about it at that moment.
Be careful.
But if I were to actually look at his stats, I believe he's like level either 26 or 36 or something. He's significantly higher level than what I have my monsters at right now. Now, you've probably picked up from the way I'm describing this cave that this guy is actually not the intended route, that he is a harder fight than what you're actually supposed to have to do. I didn't know that yet. I thought I had actually taken the right turn, and I was fighting a creature that I was supposed to be fighting. Like, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, this guy's so hard, he has to be the last one that I'm supposed to fight in this thing. This must be the boss one. Man, this is a tough fight. So, I was trying to force my way through it, and you'll see what happens here in just a moment. And of course, by you'll see in just a moment, I mean, I'll skip you ahead so you can see exactly what happened. Yeah, that attack took me out pretty much every single time. I could never do quite enough damage to actually either stun him, topple him. I couldn't build up enough kinship to actually mount. And then I happened to look at my map, and this is actually the time where I did that. I was just kind of looking around trying to figure out if there was somewhere where I could go. So I was looking outside, thinking about going back to the town for a moment, which I did actually do to make the Ludroth hammer to try and help, but then I noticed this when I came back. In case you didn't catch that, Anjanath is in one spot, and then the map opened up in the opposite direction and didn't actually end. Like, for some reason in my head, I had thought this was the end. I didn't look up and see the breakable wall up at the top of that little climbable spot. Needless to say, this suddenly revamped my view of this cave. I had actually been thinking about giving up and restarting my save file because of the fact that you cannot quit out of side quests. This did at least tell me that if you can take the side quest, you probably have high enough levels and strength to actually beat it, but I don't know that that's always going to be the case. So be very careful, make sure you actually have your backup saves so that if you do start into a side quest, you can back out of it. I didn't do that whenever I was doing this one. Like, I didn't actually cycle back like I should have. But you should probably make a hard save before picking up any sort of side quest, anything that's going to lock you into not the main story or anything along those lines, because the issue I was running into was some of the monsters in the open area near here were either significantly unfun to try to farm for experience, but you could do it, or they just were so low level that they were barely giving me anything. So trying to grind these guys up to be high enough level to actually take on the Anjanath was going to take forever. Whereas if I'd been able to actually progress the main story a little bit and get to a slightly more suited area for my current level, it wouldn't have really been that big a deal. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump things ahead to the point where we actually do the boss of this side quest. This one's really nothing super complex, it's just a Gypceros. So, you just fight a standard Gypceros fight that is of an appropriate level and is very much beatable, but we'll let it play out in case you need that. And I'll actually talk for a minute about one mistake that happened whenever I was actually making the video. You see, I lost the next set of footage that comes after this. That is genuinely unfortunate because it was Murray's side quest. And Murray's side quest is actually probably the only one that I would say you absolutely need to do, even if you don't do any of the other ones. And what happens with Murray's side quest, just to give you some tips on it, you go out with her, him, I'm not sure which, to look for a Poogie. It's one of the family Poogies, but apparently these are notorious ones, so it's sort of a gimmicky, kind of funny side quest. And you end up being mounted on your Monstie, and you have to participate in a race. And during that race, there are red mushrooms that will accelerate you, and I didn't actually see any of the purple ones, even though it describes in the tutorial that slow you down. You have to hit all the red ones to be able to win, and you just kind of keep the turns going relatively tuned in. Like, it's not that hard to win that first race. I'm sure the later ones will actually be a challenge, but it wasn't that hard. Why do you need to do it? Because when you beat it, you actually pick up the ability to detect if there are Poogies nearby. And when I say nearby, I mean very, very close nearby. Not nearby like open up your map and it might be within a half a mile radius. I mean, if you get that notification pop up, just stop and look around and you'll probably see someone tucked away somewhere that you can go pick up. So if you're actually interested in trying to get all the Poogies, it's a necessary side quest. And it's unfortunate that I lost the footage for it. It got corrupted. And there was one other thing that got corrupted, and that was 2 of the actual boss fights, but they're relatively straightforward boss fights. It's against 2 feral Velocidrome and a feral Gypceros. So, kind of ironic that Gypceros is what's on the screen right now. Now, the feral fights, in case you haven't noticed, are really sort of puzzle fights. The Velocidrome one, it seems like one Velocidrome is fire, one is ice. Obviously, if you hit them with the respective element, they go down pretty quickly. If you're doing all the side content, though, they're going to go down really fast anyway. Like, my guys at this point were around level 16, 17, maybe all the way up to 18 at that point, but although I'm pretty sure I didn't hit 18 until after I hit the boss for this act. But I was able to take them down with 0 issue. So if you have been appropriately playing and leveling up and you're somewhere around 15, 16 range, you're not going to have any trouble with them. And you won't have any trouble with the Gypceros either. You handle it just like you do a normal Gypceros, try to break the head, keep it from flashing you, and just take it out. It's relatively easy fights, don't worry too much about them. So I'll be quiet for the last couple seconds of this.
All right, over there.
Yeah!
Nice one.
Hope so. See what we can do. Nice job.
Whew, that's done.
Now,
Have you back?
we're going to leave this particular footage in for one specific reason, and that is that what we're watching is the tutorial for how to do the Rite of Channeling. What that is this is what makes Monster Hunter stories a little bit more simplistic than Pokemon in terms of actually controlling how good your Monstie. If you know about breeding for IVs and all that sort of stuff in Pokemon, the rough systemic sort of equivalent of it in Monster Hunter stories is a combination of getting your creature's rank up to the highest rank it can be for that environment, as well as getting the right combination of genes. You have what is basically a bingo card, and it tells you what sort of stat bonuses you will get on the bingo card if you actually get enough traits and the right type of traits to get 3 in a row in each category. Now, the way it works, you can actually get 3 in a row based off of not just element, but attack type. So as long as it matches one of those two things, it will actually count for that row. And if you get 3 of a kind, you get the bonus based off of how many bingos that you actually have. And if you can see on screen, there's multiple places to actually see it, but let me highlight one. So just looking at that one, if you manage to get 2 bingos, you get speed +1, 3 gives you stamina recovery +3, and 5 gives you starting stamina +15. So these are significant bonuses that will boost your Monstie's traits during a fight. And you'll actually see in the little stats at the bottom of that panel what sort of stats are actually being increased. Cool thing is, unlike in previous games, if you transfer genes from one Monstie to another, it actually doesn't consume the Monstie. It used to just completely consume the previous one, so you could only ever actually steal 1 gene from it. What it treats it as this time around is as if you're swapping the genes rather than stealing them. So, you can actually go out, hunt a Monstie, find one that has the genes you want, swap the genes around, then release the one that you just stole the genes off of that you want back into the environment to help boost the habitat level. So, lots of fun ways to mix and match with this, and you can probably see the broken potential this gives almost every Monstie in the game, that you can go through and customize its gene set, which is also the way that you'll customize its move set. But it's simpler than Pokemon in the sense that there's not quite as many variables going into it. It's just, you just have to hunt down enough Monsties of the specific type that you want until you actually get the gene pool that you want, and then you can move them all over to the Monstie that you want to keep. So over time you can customize one Monstie to be what you want, and you can make even relatively low level, low power Monsties into stuff that you could take you all the way through endgame. It's a really robust system that doesn't actually, I think, get talked about enough or appreciated enough in the general press pool, like as far as this type of game goes. But it's one of the things that really makes Monster Hunter stories stand out. So definitely recommend diving into it at some point and giving some people a really big deep dive on it. By the way, it's highlighting free bonus genes. You can get rainbow genes, and rainbow genes will match up with basically anything. And as you can imagine, those are probably your ones that are best sort of set in the middle. But if we get to a point where we're really needing to customize some genes, we may dive into it a little bit deeper on here, but I don't normally do super in-depth tutorials, so you probably have to look elsewhere for that. Anyway, let's jump some stuff out and move forward. I just went ahead and automatically skipped past the next cinematic that came up after that, and we're skipping one right here too, but we're going through some interesting story beats that are happening, and we're getting ready to go into a really cool, fun fight.
This monster.
Yeah, so this is the weaponized Glavenus that you saw in the trailer for the game. And this is actually pretty cool. I like the idea of the armorized Monsties, and it does make it kind of curious as to exactly what's going on, but they're referred to as Honed Glavenus. Is there anything in particular that makes them seem somewhat dangerous? Not really. They do speed attacks in their normal mode. I believe they do power when they get enraged. But as you can kind of see, my guys are really taking tons of damage off of them. Water is the trick here because they're fire element monsters. And it's just not that bad of a fight. Yet again, if you're doing any extra side content at all, you're probably generally going to be out-leveling the story bosses. Monster Hunter Stories isn't renowned for having the sharpest difficulty for the most part. Now, it does have a little bit of a history of having difficulty spikes when it comes to major bosses, so like Elder Dragons, that type of stuff. So there will probably be a difficulty spike at some point in the game. It sort of replicates the main Monster Hunter series where there's usually a big spike when you go up from like low rank to high rank and then high rank to master rank. But this is not where that happens. It's just a fun fight. So I'll let this play out, and if you really need any tips for it, just leave a comment below and I'll try to help you out.
Counting on you. Got it! Yes!
You did it! Now's your chance!
Great work. Don't push yourself.
No! Watch out!
Let's go! Great work.
Watch out!
Got it.
All right!
Let's go!
Now's your chance!
This'll do it! How about this?
You did it!
So, after that last fight, it's basically just a really long cinematic, and then you end up walking through a long corridor that has some relatively easy Monsties to fight if you really want to fight them. So if you want to gain some last experience before the final boss of the first act, do so, because Magnamalo is no joke. The first time I went up against him, he actually beat me. And so I had to fight it. Now, granted, I lost footage of that fight, unfortunately, but I did have my backup save, so I was able to actually go back and get this one back. For some reason, Monster Hunter Stories is not getting along super well with my external hard drive. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, what you want to do is really focus on trying to break parts, because any part that's covered in flames will significantly ramp up how much damage he can do with those attacks, like his big group-wide attacks, to the point where he almost one-shot me, and he did one-shot me in the first time around, but I'm not really sure why he didn't any other time. He'd come close, but didn't quite get there. But if you can manage to break a part while he's in that stage, it will depower it so much that, as you'll see here in a moment, it doesn't even really do any damage to you. But you need to get very good at breaking parts, which is one of the reasons why I really like to pull the hammer out for this, because hammer is excellent at part breaking. I'm not sure which element to bring in with him. I didn't actually check in on that, but water seemed to be doing a good trick as well, which is one of the reasons why I switched to Ludroth, although speed will work against him for the most part, but technical is a good one to use against Magnamalo as well. So just to refresh you, in general, speed counters power, which counters technical. The way Magnamalo's attacks work, when he's not got any sort of mantle, so he's not got any flames on him, he does normal attacks, or his normal state is speed, so you would need to use technical to counter those. When he first has the basic mantle, he uses power, and so you would need to actually use speed to counter the power. And then when he gets to his like nearly critical state where he's about to do a super attack, he actually will start doing technical attacks, and you can use power to counter those. For the most part, if you're doing speed attacks, you're going to counter most of his stuff in case you're just not sure exactly when to change. So speed seems to work decently well on this, but realistically, you need to be focusing on killing off those parts. And the reason why the technical counters are actually useful, and this is the first fight where I really felt the need to use this, if you use the appropriate type of attack whenever he's actually targeting you, then you will counter it, you won't take any damage from it, and it will save you from actually potentially losing that heart. The health gauge in this game is deceptive. People tend to usually think health is the most important thing. No, those little hearts are the most important thing. And that health gauge is how close the monster is currently to just whipping your ass. So really what you need to do is protect that health as much as possible, because later in the game you'll get to a point where there are monsters that, even when you're appropriately fighting them, will have attacks that, if you don't counter them properly, will just one-shot your gauge. That's been true in the other Stories games, and I can't imagine it won't be true in this one as well, that there's going to be fights where you just have to know the strategy. A lot of the more fun fights in Stories end up being more of a puzzle than just a straight up you win by doing this. You have to figure out the right dance to actually get through. Alright, that being said, I'm going to be quiet and let this play out.
Watch out!
And this will be it for the first part of this series. Well, second part, technically. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a comment and a like, and subscribe and follow, because we will do some more videos for stories in the near future, especially since Wilds is now slowing down. Now, how many more videos? Don't know, but we'll see. Either way, remember, if I can beat it, so can you.